Major League Soccer came back. It came back after a 3-week hiatus out of respect for the international break and obviously the onset of these tournaments happening this summer. It came back with a vengeance, lots of different stories and lots of different things to talk about. I think let's start in Austin, shall we, Mosse?
Absolutely.
All right. So look, it happens almost seemingly every year as Major League Soccer continues to expand and new markets come into play. And within those new markets, these new stadiums. Austin, the long and storied and even you'd say controversial history when it comes to how this came to be. Well, they finally got their moment. Austin finally opened up their stadium and with their team. And it was a week where actually it was a soft launch earlier in the week with the United States women's national team opening up the stadium. And then Austin, the MLS team, the main tenant and their home, that was opened up on the weekend. And it's always wonderful. And it's always interesting to see the people that have been there from the start, even before an MLS team was, a twinkle in anybody's eye. There were people there on the ground that were thinking about this. And then the whole way that it all came from Columbus and the pre-court controversy and all of that kind of stuff. But then to see Austin have this moment of celebration. Now, the actual performance on the field was not anything we're going to put in a time capsule, and they still haven't yet scored a goal because it ended up 0-0, but it was still a massive celebration. And even from afar, you could feel how important it meant, how important it was and how much it meant to that city, and not just the soccer part of that city, to that city. And we had our friend Matthew McConaughey, who is the Minister of Culture over there with Austin, on hand, dressed from head to toe in verde, in green, which is obviously a big theme, leading the chants. He had his bongos out, all of this kind of celebration for what hopefully is going to be a long and fruitful and successful place that becomes not just a place where you go and watch your team play, but a communal type of cathedral and religion to give you a place where everybody comes together. And from the outside, it looked great. I can't wait to actually get there and see what everything is, not just in the 90 minutes that happens in the game, but the lead up to the game, the experience in the stadium, what that stadium means to that community, to that area, and ultimately to this soccer team. So that was fun to see. This Matthew McConaughey situation over there, Mosse. We actually brought him up on the Copa America coverage these past couple of days. Do you think that it gets to a point where it gets too much and people are over it and people start rolling their eyes, and not from the outside, because who gives a crap what people from the outside think, but on the inside, do you think that it will wear off in time?
I do, especially if the team struggles on the field. They are winless in 6, as you mentioned. Listen, he's playing his part right now. I mean, he's meant to be a cheerleader. He's not a soccer guy. It's not like David Beckham in the sense that he's actually meant to contribute in terms of acquiring players and making soccer-related decisions. Matthew McConaughey is a celebrity owner in a totally different sense from David Beckham. So he's doing what we want him to do right now. I mean, he's invested and he's excited and he's trying to pump everything up. But yeah, if they keep struggling on the field, eventually this is going to get old. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the most interesting and entertaining part of your team is your owner playing bongos and wearing a green suit, then you are going to have problems. And look, that is not to say that this team hasn't already been successful. Let's be honest. We've seen MLS teams that have gone on the road for extended periods of time and then come back to their stadium and have had much fewer points than I think the point per game ultimately that Austin was able to achieve in this stretch. But now you got to amass points at home, and you got to give those people in that cathedral something to scream and yell about and be excited about. And it's, yeah, I think Matthew McConaughey is a smart guy. I think he understands that this was needed. This is part of his job as an owner, to use that celebrity and to use that attraction that he garners and bring people in that otherwise wouldn't even know about what's going on. But it has a limited shelf life, and I think he understands that, and I think he will probably transition out of the the much more overt type of minister of culture, and kind of hand it off to in the very capable hands of the supporters group, and that supporters culture that is continuing to grow, the different supporters groups they have, the different traditions that they have or will create going forward. So right now it's all good. It's fun. I don't think that there was any part of it that was cringy, unless maybe you're from Columbus, and no matter what they do, it's going to be negative and cringy for them. But I think in general, it was fun. It was great to see. What do you got?
Speaking of, it was somewhat fitting that on the same day that Austin played their first match at their new stadium, Columbus played their final match at Columbus Crew Stadium, which was the first soccer-specific stadium in MLS history. They beat Chicago 2-0, Gyasi Zardes with both goals. We were there for MLS Cup last year. You played in that stadium. I'm sure that evoked some emotions in you.
Yeah, it was, it's a lot of stadium types of moments this past week and this past weekend. And, historic Columbus Stadium for what it has meant to Major League Soccer, for what it has meant to American soccer, let's be honest. So it has the association with the U.S. men's national team and women's national team, but certainly from a men's perspective, the 2-0 types of things and those historic games that were played there, and specifically why the U.S. men's national team chose to play their games, and very important games, and take teams to that because of the incredible support that they have gotten there. And then from an MLS perspective, back when it opened up, I remember at that point I was where was I playing? I think I was playing in Kansas City for the Kansas City then Wizards at the time. And when that opened up, I vividly remember seeing it on television for the first time, walking into a bar and seeing it up on television and mistaking it for a European broadcast. And that's how important and monumental it was, and how different it was from our traditional American broadcasts in American stadiums. And a lot of these stadiums were shared and predominantly made for football. And so the sight lines were different. The optics were just so different in terms of how it broadcasts. And it fundamentally changed everything. And let's be honest, it's a glorified high school stadium. Okay. And yet it was so important. There is no then Home Depot Center a few years later without it. And so you got to start somewhere. And so kudos and thank you and hats off and tribute and respect to Lamar Hunt and to the Hunt family for establishing that at a time when the soccer specific stadium wasn't really something that we talked about. And in doing so, setting a marker that then everybody that came after said, we are going to beat. And, yes, Phil Anschutz with the Los Angeles Galaxy, and then the Home Depot Center completely took it to a whole nother level, but you got to start somewhere. And so it was wonderful for them to finish it. And by the way, Columbus is moving into an incredible stadium, this 2.0 when it comes to soccer specific stadiums. But to have that last moment and to see Gyasi Zardes, who has meant so much to the Columbus Crew organization, especially after everything that the Columbus Crew has been through over the last couple of years, to have that moment of celebration with fans back in. And by the way, for the most part, it was 100% capacity in the league this past week. And there were a couple of different things. You had Portland, which, Portland's going to Portland, right? They had 80% capacity or something like that. It's just this random 80% number. And I'm sure that there's a reason for the number, and Merritt Paulson up there will tell me why, but it was 80% capacity. Okay, fine. You want to do 80%? Fine. Most of the places were 100% capacity. So it was great to see these huge and big crowds back, and everybody back in celebrating and cheering and doing all of that. There were, Toronto still that's playing down in Florida doesn't have a crowd, and NYCFC is still playing over at Red Bull Arena. So there's still some weird stuff going on, but it was great to see the crowds back and people able to sit there and to cheer and to stand and to sing and to do all the different things that we've missed for so long at a level that we haven't seen since pre-pandemic. What you got, Mosse?
Well, you mentioned Portland and Toronto. Portland beat Sporting KC 2-1, and they got Sebastian Blanco back. He came on as a sub in that game, his first appearance of the season. Toronto lost 3-2 to Orlando. Pozuelo made his first start of the campaign. He had come on as a sub in the previous game against Columbus. And Daryl Dike made his 2021 MLS debut, which is something I did not think was going to happen. I must confess, I thought he'd get snapped up right after the loan with Barnsley. He might still go before the end of this European summer window, but for now, he's an Orlando City player again, which is obviously an incredible addition. And so just an overall injection of talent in the league, getting guys like Blanco and DK and Pozuelo back on the field. It's good news. More stars to follow. Huh?
Well, okay. So you mentioned the Daryl DK situation. So let's dive into that for a second here. I like you. That was surprising. I mean, look, he's an MLS and Orlando player, so it's not necessarily surprising that he is playing for the team that he is part of. But given what has happened over the last 4 months, 5 months with his loan, do you think that this is a problem? In that, do you think that this means that all the hype that was attached to him isn't as much as we thought it was going to be? Do you think that there's actually isn't going to be a move? Do you think that Orlando has set the price too high, or why do you think this is happening?
I think Orlando have made the calculation that the more he plays, the more his stock is going to go up, which is taking a little bit of a chance because he could get hurt.
Right.
He could have a dip in form, but no, they really believe in his talent. And so they think the longer they hold on to him, they're actually going to be able to sell him for more down the road.
And there's a chance that he could also be playing for the U.S. in Gold Cup too, which, if he has another great tournament. So yeah, maybe it's a calculated risk, but it is a risk ultimately. And if they have a bird in the hand right now in terms of offers, they're saying no. They think with time and with more games here, maybe later on this summer, he becomes that much more valuable. We benefit from an MLS perspective, and Orlando benefits because you have a great person and player on the field that we get to see actually trying to score goals. Speaking of goals, Mosse, did you watch any of the Atlanta game, the Atlanta Philly game?
I know where you're going. I received a couple of tweets about the Glesnes strike because you might recall I previously went on a rant on this pod about how it drives me crazy that it's always these long distance strikes that win the AT&T Goal of the Week awards. I will say I have no issue if Glesnes wins it, but I stand by my overall point that I'm way less impressed by a center back closing his eyes and striking a ball from 30 yards out and having it go in the top corner, as opposed to a well-worked team goal like some of the goals that Belgium has scored at the Euros, or a play where a guy dribbles past 3 defenders and floats home. So I stand by my overall point, but this one was absolutely amazing. I'm not going to deny that.
Well, how dare you? No, wait. Oh, it's absolutely amazing after you just said it's basically a person who doesn't even have any real skill or ability, just closing his eyes and hitting it from, and you said 30, by the way, it was more than 30. Okay. When he hit it, and it was a screamer. And what makes it so impressive is, I was talking about before the pandemic, the last game before the pandemic we actually did LAFC in Philadelphia, in which he scored. And that one, it wasn't even the run of play. It was actually a free kick, another screamer like that. So he does have it evidently in his arsenal to be able to do this, or it's just two complete anomalies that we have been able to see, and we are the beneficiaries because, as you said, it was incredible. Now, Atlanta in that moment loses the 3 points and has to settle for one in front of another huge crowd there. But if you're gonna give up a goal, let it be a screamer like that. And if you haven't seen it, I tweeted it out. You should go find it. It is phenomenal, especially. It hits the stanchion and it makes that noise, and it's just sick in the best possible way. What else, Mosse, from an MLS perspective? 35 yards is what our good friend Jeff Hernandez is saying over here, but I don't know. I mean, if that's the official word, fine. So we're going to split the baby here. Mosse, what else? Did you watch any of the Sounders, who are right now the best team?
That's where I was going to go next. Yeah, okay, Seattle benefiting from the fact that Raul Ruiz was somewhat surprisingly left off the Peru Copa America roster, and so he's playing for them. He scored. They beat the Galaxy 2-1. LAFC dominated but held to a 1-1 draw by Houston. Diego Rossi is playing in these games, though. I know you felt like he should have been on the Uruguay Copa America squad. So a lot of MLS players in Copa America, but MLS teams are benefiting in some instances from players being left off those rosters.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk more about Copa America and some of the problems that are associated with some of these teams there, but. Yeah, I mean, Diego Rossi, it blows my mind that he's not involved. But to your point, we get the benefit of it. Now, I guess we can finish it up here when it comes to Major League Soccer. Do you think, Mosse, that Bob Bradley is in jeopardy right now in terms of being on the hot seat from a coaching perspective? Because it has not gone well yet again this year for an LAFC team that we expect much more from and has plenty of talent and has shown over the years that they are good. And Bob Bradley's a legendary coach right now, but it's not happening for LAFC. And there are not just groans. There's a faction out there that is really saying, hey, something needs to change. And obviously you can't fire the whole team.
I don't. I still think they're playing better than the results, and the breaks will even out and they'll surge up the table eventually. And just overall, I think he's built up some currency there, winning the Supporter Shield, getting to a CCL final. He's done overall an excellent job there. So I think even if this season ended up being a disappointing one, I wouldn't get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have a long leash, and rightfully and fairly so, given what he has done. And what he has done isn't just about the wins and losses. I mean, he came in and basically established the identity and the personality and the character and the soul, if you will, along with others. But he was heavily and is heavily a part of defining what LAFC is. But in doing so, he has defined it as a super club. They came into this league. There wasn't a soft launch. This was right from the get-go. This was a team that was going to compete. This was a team that was going to do things historically well, and they did. And therefore, you set a level of expectations. As I said, I don't think that there's going to be a change, but if this was Real Madrid, or if this was Barcelona, if this was another team, it wouldn't even be a question. The fact that you are a living legend when it comes to the game, that's all fine, but Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? I don't think that that's necessarily, like I said, going to happen with LAFC. But if you are truly this team that accepts nothing less than greatness, then this is far from what you have promised yourselves and what you have promised everybody else. And we'll see if those changes happen. It's still a long season, still a long way to go. And as we get through summer, if LAFC hasn't turned that corner and looks like a team that is not just competitive, but it is good, then I think those calls are only going to get louder because you have this incredible fan base that you have cultivated over the last years is based on giving them a team that is not just good, but that is great. And that is not what you have right now. And the leadership right now needs to figure out, is it a situation where these players are going to come good, or is it a situation where whatever Bob Bradley has done has run its course and somebody else could come in and do better with the players that you have at hand? I don't know. Like I said, I don't think that there's going to be changes. It would surprise me if there was a change anytime soon when it comes to Bob Bradley.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.